The investigation determined that the accident was caused by the sudden loss of altitude and lift due to downdraft. At 9:56, the crew entered IMC, which is Instrument Meteorological Conditions. To the layman, it is they flew into clouds because they no longer could stay away from the clouds, so they flew into clouds and transitioned to IFR. Now, IFR is Instrument Flight Rules. So what it means is they now transitioned from navigating using visual cues to now navigation solely on the aircraft's instruments. Suddenly, thereafter, the helicopter that was flying up without any change in its power or in the pitch, which we use to go up and down, suddenly lost height and impacted a ridgeline. The helicopter was airworthy, but it lacked additional safety enhancements.
I know a lot of Ghanaians will be curious to know if the investigative committee listened to the audio recordings, of the helicopter. And I want to find out if indeed you listened, if it's possible to give us an idea of what happened in that moment.
Accident investigation team omote concerning helicopter crash on the 6th of August 2025 ewo Jumping Forest Reserve ewo Anochi Chrome Adanse District taking the lives of Omane Boama Defense Minister and Afensu Mutala Mohammed and other 6 people. Sisi Ameka say emra accident no esiye. His Excellency the President John Dramani Mahama a committee investigation committee say finding the cost of it or penny anymore ya omo finding black box will plane him so ko pie mu China now omo call China no omo investigation omo ye and afa so the cost of it no sisi Ameka say ade say Captain Paul Fojo e de ni nyina e de ababetuja yenti. Ebisa for 3P garlic mixture say immune booster be boost your immune system no stroke na chewa na osa de ye wo biare na ntwen e majare enkawo ento fabinom e feeling kekawo bi ehihye wo nipadue nim na be cleanse ni nyina kama de amaw wo ye oba wo kwa fichire wo te ya wo asesa so na be ma wo jonso wo te ya wo be me ma fabinanom na ebetime abo wo panimbo na we to ato a numbers na egu on fa na on pay phone twetwen komo sa na open normal one so a ubora pharmacy shop bia ubenya 3P garlic mixture ni bi ato.
To rule out any potential human causes, we also examine the qualifications, experience, and competence of the crew. The captain has a postgraduate certificate in safety and accident investigation from Cranfield University, UK, in 2024. The captain was a qualified FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, commercial and instrument-rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, USA, in April 2015, 10 years ago. Within the Ghana Air Force, he was recategorized in March 2025 as a Cat C pilot. That is, a pilot qualified to be a captain on the helicopter, the Z9 helicopter. And he had a green instrument rating. In the Air Force, they have gradings for pilots, categories for pilots from A to D. D being, depends on what you call high and low, D being for the initial, sort of, and then you go all the way to A. It's interesting to note that for quite a while, and as at now in the Air Force, the highest category is Cat C. So the pilot was totally competent to be flying this plane. The co-pilot was also a qualified FAA commercial and instrument-rated pilot from Bristol Academy, Florida, and he qualified in April 2023. In December 2024, he was recategorized within the Ghana Air Force as a Category D pilot on helicopter type with a white instrument rating. To further rule out any potential human causes, we examined the medical and psychological records of the crew. A review of the medical and personal records revealed no known medical or psychological conditions in the captain, co-pilot, or technician at the time of flight. All three were described by witnesses as calm, prepared, and professional during the pre-flight activities. Fatigue or medication was not considered to have materially affected their performance on the day of flight. Now to the sequence of events. The flight departed Accra under visual flight rules in marginal weather. The flight to Brofuyedro was uneventful. Brofuyedro is approximately 90 miles from Accra, about 10 miles from Obuasi. As the flight approached Obuasi, visibility deteriorated rapidly due to mist and low clouds. At 9:56, the crew entered IMC, which is Instrument Meteorological Conditions. To the layman, it is they flew into clouds because they no longer could stay away from the clouds, so they flew into clouds and transitioned to IFR. Now, IFR is Instrument Flight Rules. So what it means is they now transitioned from navigating using visual cues to now navigation solely on the aircraft's instruments. The crew then initiated a climb to cross terrain that they were aware of. They initiated the climb to cross the terrain. Seconds before impact, the crew stated that they could see the high ground below, so they had gone over it. Suddenly thereafter, the helicopter that was flying up without any change in its power or in the pitch which we use to go up and down, suddenly lost height and impacted a ridgeline at about 1370 feet above sea level. And this was about 6.5 miles from the destination, and this happened at 9:58. Is what the planned track had been. The purple line is what the aircraft actually flew. And that took place because it was avoiding clouds and so on and ended up where it was. Now to our findings. The helicopter was airworthy, but it lacked additional safety enhancements. For instance, the terrain awareness warning system. Now, you know, the terrain awareness warning system, for instance, is predictive. So what it does is it tells you, warns you, it gives you a better picture of the situation and puts the pilots in a better, it gives them, puts them in a position to make better judgments, to be able to see everything and be able to foretell if there are any things that could possibly create a problem. But they lack the additional safety enhancements required for the weather phenomenon over that terrain. There was adverse weather, there was limited visibility, there was rising rugged terrain, with this terrain induced complicating factors, and there were no ground-based navigational route aids en route. The investigation would like to say that from everything they gathered, the emergency response was very timely. The fact that the first responders managed to get to the site in about 2 hours was remarkable because the terrain has very steep slopes. It was raining. It was slippery. So it wasn't the easiest thing to do. When we went to the site, it was also raining and it was very slippery. And we struggled using sticks and everything to try to get up there. So looking at everything, we would say very confidently that the emergency response was very timely. The investigation determined that the accident was caused by the sudden loss of altitude and lift due to downdraft. This loss of altitude without change in power or pitch altitude is consistent with downdraft associated with changing environmental conditions over high terrain. In our findings also, we said there's limited national navigational capacity, a capability for en route and remote area weather services. We also looked at training and realized that the Air Force doesn't have much simulator training. We looked at flight monitoring and realized that there was no flight data monitoring also taking place. For flight following and tracking of aircrafts, we realized that it was also not there. There's no secondary surveillance radar, no automatic dependent surveillance broadcasts, or any other real-time tracking of aircraft. Our safety recommendations. There is a definite need to modernize the fleet of the Ghana Air Force. We have recommended that the Air Force acquire modern aircraft with terrain avoidance warning systems and modern navigation systems. That the aircraft should have cockpit voice recorders and flight data recorders, which are the audiovisual capable types. That the Air Force should invest in simulators for recurrent training. That they contract certified aviation weather provider or providers, and that Ghana as a nation should try to have en route navigational aids, especially in remote areas. The Air Force should seriously consider establishing flight data monitoring and en route tracking systems. And finally, we believe that they need to acquire ground support equipment, modernize what they have. In conclusion, the helicopter accident was an unfortunate and sudden weather-related accident. Implementing the safety recommendations will prevent the reoccurrence of future accidents. At this time, before I take any questions, I just want to give a few acknowledgements. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts and the support that the team had from the National Security Secretariat, led by the National Security Coordinator. It made what was a really difficult job for us much easier to do and encouraged us to do and persevere to come up with these results.
I know a lot of Ghanaians will be curious to know if the investigative committee listened to the audio recordings, of the helicopter. And I want to find out if indeed you listened, if it's possible to give us an idea of what happened in that moment. And then the second question, you talked about modernizing the fleet of the Ghana Armed Forces. I know right after the incident, there were calls to modernize the fleet, and this revelation is definitely going to reignite the calls, especially also coming on the back of recent discoveries about the presidential jet. I know there are investments. There are plans to inject $1 billion to retool the security agencies. As an expert, I want to find out how fast should we do this and which areas should we look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, please? Yeah, courage. Yeah.
Komla Kulicha, I work at Media General. What was the sudden cause of the loss of altitude for the aircraft, and also the fact that there was postponement in the airworthiness of the helicopter? One, was there an understanding why the Ghana Air Force postponed the initial maintenance of the Z9, and what was the reason behind this?
Thank you very much. Any other questions, please? Okay, so Captain Fojo would answer these, after which we'll come back for another round of questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Yes, we listened to the CVR. We listened to it several times. And it is part of what informed us of what caused the accident. And for modernization of the fleet, we think it should be done immediately. Tomorrow is not fast enough. As soon as the country can afford and do it, we should do it, because it would help the Air Force with this core mandate, part of which is to fly dignitaries all over the country. And I think we owe it to ourselves as a nation to make sure that we have aircraft fit for purpose, aircraft that are of the highest technology, to make sure that everything is very, very safe. Yeah. To the sudden loss of altitude, I'm sure it was in one of the slides. When you're over rugged territory, that's over terrain, dependent on the steepness and so on and so forth, it's very easy to have turbulence. It's caused by eddies and rotors. It's an aviation phenomena, right? And you have updrafts, you have downdrafts. And even interestingly, even above the ridge, you can still have downdrafts coming. And it's not, it's a phenomenon, it's an aviation phenomena that unfortunately they fell into. They were very unfortunate, but it's a phenomenon that they fell into. And because there cannot be any other reason for that sudden loss of altitude for a plane climbing with power, with a pitch attitude, right? Because you see, the flight data recorder, to just help you understand the whole thing, the flight data recorder records the last 10 hours of a flight. The cockpit voice recorder records the last 2 hours of a flight. The flight data recorder, this particular one of this helicopter, records 93 parameters every second. The 93 parameters is made up of 48 analog parameters and 45 switch positions. So, looking at the flight data report, you know where all the switch positions are, you know what the height of the plane was, you know the exact position you know it time bound. So, what we are saying is from informed data. It's not that we've just conjectured something. We have the data, we've looked at it, and that is how come we've come with the conclusions we've come up with. I hope I've answered. Then the last one, the postponement of the maintenance. It's industrial practice, it's operational. In the airlines, it's done. Air Force doing it, there's nothing wrong with it. It's accepted practice. So there's nothing to it. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Zion View Construction and Services Semican show say a banner adansi hu dwumedie biade fani nyina e show mo sa opesi nsi dan posh house man from start to finish nana ni nyina ye Zion View and Construction Services numbers na egu on fa say ye dampness treatment ana wo walls na puto bi bra be ba wo dan ne ho a ne nyina ye be cleanse ne nyina kama dia ma say Italian graffiato so a walls a pepe ya be wo pe no so bia ye betimi aye ne nyina kama e dia ma general building construction na ne nyina ye Zion View Construction and Services numbers na go screen na selfa na one ending komo
Odofo so pe company obetimi e de wo ho ato omo so e ba no adansi ene ho dwumedie bia dia eno a ene Zion View Construction and Services e ba no general building construction say yensi dan fit scratch enko na wieye na enye de wakoma pedie eno a ne Zion View Construction and Services e ba no dampness treatment say walls ho na cracking ensuo elikifa walls ho tino ama apoto bibre age wo dan no aboso dia Zion View samen kan show say obe apply waterproof coating e de ama external and internal walls no sene be ya wonso no obetimi afa wo dan no ho afa na apoto bibre nyina nso akle e de ama ebiemu no se ba no Italian graffiato se wo si abefo de ya baby a wo ho access scratch lines ne nam ho fefefe en nso no omudi sa dwumade no kama stamped concrete for compound se wo pe concrete papa e de aya o compound a e be che na be san so aye fe e de ama wo dia fashion Zion View Construction and Services omo ensa ebano epoxy floor me pacha so ope epoxy floor papa ope de beche e de amount ope de hoho etu nan e de si ofia obeka se emom o floor si eyefe so ope e de amount garage floors basement countertops and na simple no ope ne so commercial dwumede bia udi se bank bi na wusi restaurant bi na wusi hotel bi na wusi eno a ene Zion View Construction and Services so what Ghana anase amano no dia na ope company a ombesi ofie no SSC dia me pacho for numbers we say 0543 123829 0543 123829 and I say 0249 711659 0249 711659 so we say Zion View Construction and Services BM so a obetimi akọ omo website so www.zionviewconstruction.com